This is Katie's Wish, and it's by Barbara Shook Hazen. Illustrated by Emily Arnold McCulley. Everyone sat Sunday still as Granda said grace. We ask God's blessing on these fields, this family, and the food we eat. Except for the potatoes, Katie muttered under her breath. I wish they'd go away. They were plain boiled and boring, not the way she liked, the way Mom used to make them, with lashings of milk, onion bits, and a knob of butter. Uncle Eamon and Auntie Angelica gasped. That means they went. Katie's older cousin Brian snickered, so he giggled. The two families always shared the after-church meal. Child, be careful the way you speak, Granny chided. Words have wings and the wee folk have ears. Aye, Granda said. 'Tis the plenty of plain pratties that fills our stomachs. Be grateful for what you've got. I'm sorry, said Katie, shamed. Ever since Mom died and her da left for America, she was always saying the wrong thing. So they were saying, be grateful for the food you have. After supper, while the others chatted, Katie fed Pig the potato peelings. She heard Granda's voice soaring above the others. And now her da wants Katie to come over, he was saying. Him with his itch for roaming and big words about a better life. That's why he's sending the money. For the lass, just for the lass. Myself, I will never leave Ireland, nor will I let Katie. Katie winced. She pulled a worn letter out of her pocket and showed Pig the words she knew by heart. Dear Katie, I am in Boston town with Auntie Meg. America is a fine place, a land of promise. Here schooling is in a building, not just when the hedgemaster comes. I will send for you soon. Soon. Katie tasted the word. It sounded as far away as Mom in heaven or Da in America. Sounds like she really misses her parents, so her dad went to America in search for a better life, and her mom died. Would you be missing your mother? Granda asked later on their walk through the fields. Aye, Katie answered. We've a pretty good life, don't we now? He said with a squeeze. We've stories to spin, songs to sing, and a fine fat porker. Katie, a fine fat porker is a big fat pig. Katie wanted to say, I miss me da too, something fierce. It's been 2 Christmases since he's left, but she knew Granda didn't want to hear that. Hello and good day, a voice called out of the fog. The voice belonged to their English landlord, who owned the fields that Katie's family farmed. He was out for a ride with his son Colin. Katie waved at Colin, who often brought her oatcakes and sometimes stayed to play. Granda stiffened. Katie saw the set of his face. Are the English all bad? She asked, after Colin and his father passed. They've no use for Ireland, except to line their own pockets, Granda said, spitting out the words. We break our backs working the land, but it isn't ours, not an inch. So he's angry that the English own the land, even though they're not from Ireland, and that he has to work the fields hard, but doesn't own the land. Granda calmed himself and added, They're not all bad. There's good and bad in every kind. 'Tis the system that's bad, but enough of troubles. Come, let us look for a fairy ring. That is a fine thing to do on a misty, moist day. It happened overnight. One day the potatoes were firm and fine. The next day they were mushy and covered with black spots. Katy went with Granda and Brian to inspect them. "There's rot everywhere," Brian said, holding up a spoiled potato. "I've never seen the likes of it. We've no food but the praties. What can we do?" Grandad tasted a potato, gagged, and spit out the pieces. "Ugh! We must pray tomorrow will be better," he said, "and eat what we have stored." Katy swallowed hard. A fearful thought sank like a stone in her stomach. "It's all my fault. I wished the potatoes away." But tomorrow was not better. The potato rot spread quickly through the countryside. By late summer, once fertile fields were wasteland. Katy's grandparents found it harder and harder to feed the family and pay the rent money. Granny prayed and Granda blamed the English for everything, even the worse than usual weather. Katy tried to be extra good. She gathered berries and grass to stretch their meager meals. So they didn't have any food very much food without the potatoes. "There is fearful famine," Brian told Granda one day after a trek to town. "I've seen bloated bellies and babies too weak to blink, and a strange fever is turning people's tongues black." "It's a powerful sad time," Granda said with a worried look at Katy. So everyone's going hungry because they don't have potatoes. The next day Granda called to Katy. "Come, lass, we've a not-so-fat pig to trot to market." "No!" Katy shrieked. "Aye," Granda said. "How can we feed a pig when we can scarce feed ourselves?" Katy bit her lip to keep from crying. Pig was her friend. The awful all-my-fault feeling grew. So now they have to take the pig to the market because they can't feed the pig, and now she really feels like it's her fault because she wished the potatoes away. In town, Katy saw children begging and overheard talk of houses tumbling and families turned out in the cold. A man from Skibbereen told Granda, "In my village you can scarce tell the living from the dead. I'm thinking a curse has been laid on Ireland." Granda shuddered and clasped the man's arm. Pig sold for less than Granda had hoped. "I'm sorry," Katy mumbled guiltily as Pig was led away. "So am I," said Granda, which made her feel worse. On the way home they ran into Father O'Malley. "Finally, some good news," he told them. "The Americans are sending shiploads of corn, and the charity funds are growing." "It's like spitting on a house to put out the fire," Granda boomed, his voice tight with anger. Father O'Malley then bent to Katy, who usually greeted him with a happy hug. "Why so quiet, lass?" he asked. "Where is your smile? There's still sun in the day and a song in the lark." Katy tried to hide behind Granda. Father O'Malley was a man of God. She feared he would see her dark secret, that she wished the potatoes away. The priest gave Katy a small bag of sweets. Down the road she gave it to a beggar. Granny had a saying, "Troubles never come single." That means whenever there's trouble, there's going to be more. It seemed all too true. In early spring, Granda got an eviction notice from the landlord demanding that they leave their cottage by the end of the month. So they had to leave their home because they couldn't farm potatoes and sell them and pay for their rent, pay for their house. Then Granny took sick. She lay hollow-cheeked and barely able to sup. Granda made nettle tea. Katy put cold, wet rags on Granny's forehead and sobbed. That means she cried. I'm sorry. Fear hugged her like ground fog. When Granny stopped eating, Grandad raced to fetch Father O'Malley. The good priest came quickly. He said prayers and heard Granny's raspy confession. Then he turned to Katy and asked, What are you thinking, child? You've a face as long as the river Shannon. Katy squirmed and mumbled, Nothing. Tend to your granny and pray to God, Father O'Malley said. You are a good, caring child. No, I'm not, Katy blurted out, fists clenched. Aye, and take a wee nap, Father O'Malley added. She's blaming herself for the potatoes.